opinion on it. An expert opinion. So I have a guest, right? And we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. As you know, we always start off every after hour show with what? What are you drinking? What are you drinking? I've got ginger ale tonight. So put in the chat box, what are you drinking? So, hello, Carlo. How you doing, buddy? Carlo is in the house. Hey, Carlo, what are you drinking? Let us know. Ginger ale is really good when you've been talking all day long. My wife also has these essential oil throat lozenges things that do really good as well. So, absolutely. So let me see. Mark said he just ran out of coffee. Oh, I'm sorry. And here's a man after my own heart right there. Beer, beer, and what? You didn't. What's beer and what? What kind of beer are you drinking? You drinking IPA? You drinking Bud Light? And of course, I didn't need this. I already knew what that was. Shotzi's drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper, 2 liter, of course. Of course. Yes. So it looks like all my regulars are accounted for in the house. Welcome to those who are new. The way this works is you put your questions in the comment box. I do have some questions that were submitted ahead of time. So those get answered first, and then we'll go to the ones after that. And if I don't get to your question in this episode, I will definitely make sure that I get to it next episode, okay? Because I'm a one-legged man doing all this stuff. So I'm doing all the back behind the stuff and trying to just doing everything. That's part of doing this. My beautiful assistant has not started yet. She actually starts on the next episode. As always, we also do the acronym challenge. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you know that I do acronym challenge every morning at 8:10. I technically I do them Sunday nights, and then I schedule them to post at 8:10. I don't do them exactly at 8:10 every morning. I'm not that consistent. I just not. And if you notice, this week we were in the letter P. So here is today's acronym challenge. PAN. What's a PAN? And I gotta do my service announcement. Please have your acronym spayed or neutered. We have enough of them. We don't need any more. Todd Morse is in the house. Hi, Mr. Todd. Nobody's guessed what PAN means yet. Come on now. What does PAN mean? There we go. Mark gets it. Personal area network. Personal area network is what it means. Very good. Very good. You guys are on it tonight. Nice. Let me change off the graphics. All right, like I said, I'm the one big land here doing this. And this, I'm just started with the restream too, so I'm still kind of getting used to this. So let me go ahead and bring in our guest, and let's get some questions answered. So this question on After Hours Live came to me via TikTok, and I want to make sure I get the question right. So I'm going to read it real quick. I got to put on my safety glasses so the words don't jump off the page and injure my eyes. It says, Chuck, do you know the distance between riser cable can be installed into a plenum ceiling in Ontario? I think it's 50 feet. So as well, I know the code book, but I brought in my expert. Tim, welcome back. Can you help answer this question?
Yes and no, Chuck. So here's what it is. So one, you're talking about Ontario. So it's Canada. Canada has a different code system than what we have in the US. There are similarities, but they're different. So with Canada, you're talking about the Canadian Electrical Code C22.1-18. And with electrical code, of course, we got the NEC. And then Toronto itself could also have adopted a local code. So just like we have every state can adopt the electrical code separately, the provinces within Canada can also alter or append or amplify things in the Canadian electrical code as they see fit for their region or their city. But let me talk in generalities. When I look at the Canadian electrical code, I don't see where it allows you to do that. There is a section that's in part 12, I believe it is, that allows up to 3 foot of cord to be placed coming out of say a power pole into a suspended ceiling, assuming that suspended ceiling is a plenum space. But when I read it, it looks like it's very specific to a power cord with a plug on the end of it with the intent of energizing a multi-outlet assembly. That's in section 12-010. What I don't see is where it addresses anything for class 2 data and communication conductors. And class 2 data and communication conductors in the Canadian Electrical Code is covered under 16-2200.
It sounds to me like,
220.
I'm sorry. It sounds to me like the section that you just quoted is for like when they have a power pole for modular furniture and they're running a power cable up it through the other channel. So, because a lot of times we'll put electrical receptacles in the ceiling for like wireless access points and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it also sounds to me like this guy's confusing his 50 feet number with the listed versus unlisted. That's my initial thought when I read that question. How do you feel on that?
Well, there's a lot more text in the NEC than there is in the Canadian Electrical Code when it comes to cabling. In the National Electrical Code, you do have a 50-foot limit for unlisted cables coming into a building. That's covered under Article 805.47. Or if you're dealing with the old 2017 Electrical Code, remember they split that Article 800 up, it's 800.47. So there is a 50-foot rule. It says, though, that it is not allowed an unlisted cable is not allowed to be exposed in a general purpose, or a riser or a plenum space. So at no time can you take an unlisted cable, leave it exposed for any distance in a plenum space, even if it's a riser cable. So a riser cable is listed, by the way, it's not unlisted. So it has a CMR or CL2R or something like that on, or even the fiber OFNR. If it is riser, so it's riser listed, it's still, there's no provisions in the code that says that any amount of that cable can be exposed in a plenum.
So the one now you're talking about the NEC or the CEC on that last statement?
The NEC.
NEC. So yeah. So the CEC sounds like, make sure I understand you correctly, you're pretty sure you can't do it. NEC definitely can't do it.
Definitely can't do it. And from what I read of the Canadian Electrical Code, you can't do it either. All I see is one provision in the Canadian Electrical Code for this power cord that may be, say, attached to a multi-plug assembly, like for a power pole. But I don't see any other exceptions in the Canadian Electrical Code that would allow you to have a non-plenum cable in a plenum.
Very good. So there you go. If it's a plenum rated area, use a plenum rated cable. If you have a riser rated cable, change it.
Right. Or you have to put it in some type of a ducting, right? You can put a non-plenum cable, a listed, like a CMR cable in conduit, or a cable tray with a solid bottom and cover in a drop ceiling space.
You know, I already know the answer to this question, but I want to hear my electrical engineer say this. Interduct.
Yes, interduct.
Can you run a riser rated cable in a plenum rated interduct in a plenum rated ceiling?
I would have to get the chart. So there's an actual chart for this. And by the way, interduct is now classified as a communications raceway. And so there's literally a chart in both Article 725 and Article 800 that gives you a chart that says, if I have this type of raceway, communications raceway, which interduct would classify as, then this is what you can put in it. And I'd have to check that chart. I'd have to get back to you on that, but I'm pretty sure you cannot put a riser rated cable in a plenum interduct in a plenum. Pretty sure it has to be a plenum cable in a plenum interduct.
Right. And the reason I think it's, I agree with you there. The reason I think it's that same way is because interduct can melt. And then once that interduct melts, now you got riser rated cable in a plenum rated environment, which could produce more smoke and cause more issues.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my feeling behind it. Okay. So question number 2. I get asked questions all the time about bonding and grounding shielded cable solutions. I know what I've been taught. I know what the TDM says, but I've got an electrical engineer who's going to help us solve this question today. So the question is, do you bond both sides of a shielded cable solution? Now, the TDM says if it's 1 megahertz or less low frequency, it's generally accepted to bond one side. If it's more than 1 megahertz, the TDM recommends, as I said in my other video, recommends, not requires, that you bond both ends. But as the user pointed out, many manufacturers require different things. So I've got an electrical engineer to help us shed some light on this. Tim, what is your thoughts on this?
The thought is you have to follow what the manufacturer tells you. And the reason why is because they're the ones that have tested their equipment in the environment that they're providing you the warranty for. Now, getting past that, there's multiple reasons why you would bond a shield, right? Are you bonding it because you want to take any type of RF signal that's imposed on that and take it to a ground source? To earth ground? Are you making sure that the same voltage potential between both devices? Is it an unbalanced signal, right? Because coax, for example, is an unbalanced signal where UTP or even shielded UTP is still considered a balanced signal with the twisted pairs. So it all depends. I would prefer to bond it at both ends, but I'm not going to contradict what a manufacturer says. And I tell you, this is a common contradiction in our industry. We see it on both sides. One way to get around this is to go with the manufacturers that have a broken shield. So there's manufacturers, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but they literally make a shield that is not continuous.
Yep.
Well, if it's not continuous, there's no way to bond it. But the metal wrapping at a periodic distance acts as an RF choke and helps to minimize the amount of RF that could be imposed on the cabling.
Yeah, there's several manufacturers out there, including the one that I work for doing today. We call it our discontinuous isolation wrap. So
yes.
Yep. So what do you say to those who say, well, that creates a ground loop?
I would say most people don't understand what a ground loop is. I think they throw the term out there. I think it's something that's been passed on from people that we've worked with and the people that they used to work with, that they say, oh, well, that'll create a ground loop. I would say most people don't understand what the system looks like. And you need to draw it out before you understand what a ground loop is. So for example, say we have a telecom room, a TR on the 3rd floor of a building, and there's 2 telecom rooms as we go through a stacked riser. And we have a telecom bonding conductor that goes to the earth ground at the 1st level, and then same thing with the 2nd room. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're also going to make sure that bonding bar in our room is tied to the local electrical panel or building steel, because most likely if the building steel is part of the earth grounding system, the electrical panel is also tied to the building steel. And we would do that because we want to make sure that there's no voltage potential difference between the electrical system that serves our outlets and the equipment that we have. We want all that to be tied together. And guess what? If they're not at the same voltage potential, current will flow in the bonding conductor. That's what it's meant there to be, to keep everything at a 0 potential. So there could be current flow. That's why you want good bonding connections. So is that a ground loop? No, it's not. You still, when you look at how it's tied to, say, the building ground system itself, it should still come back to a single point of ground. And even then, it's not clear. I would say if you looked at the system, one could say, well, I have a single grounding rod. I have 3 grounding rods in this building. Well, I've seen buildings that literally have an entire loop of bonding conductor around the entire building, or they use the concrete slab as a UFR ground. I've seen power buildings and data centers where we literally put a ground grid in for every column that creates a mat. And so there, the mentality can't be it's just a single point of ground, but it's a ground plane that you're dealing with for 0 potential. So and then also the TDMM, or I should say not TDMM, 607 does allow us, TIA 607 allows you to put a bonding conductor between the 2 comm rooms. Mm-hmm. Well, is that a ground loop? Well, if all those grounds or the bonding conductor is still tied back to a single point of ground, or the ground plane, which is the building that's tied to, I would say no. But, like I said, most people throw that term out there and they're really not drawing out the system and see what's going on. And it's a commonly misused term.
Here's another one. Some people say that if you don't bond both ends, you basically just created an antenna.
Yes. Yes. It looked like an antenna. I agree.
So you should bond both ends unless the manufacturer tells you not to. Does that make sense?
Well, if I have no guidance whatsoever, I'm going to try to bond both ends. So if I'm tying between two comm rooms, I will fully bond it in both comm rooms. So say I have a unshielded 200 pair shielded, I should say an unshielded twisted pair telephone cable with a aluminum wrap on the outside. I will tie it to both comm rooms and tie it to the bond bar in both comm rooms. Absolutely. If I have a horizontal piece of cable that goes out to an outlet jack, I may not have a provision for actually bonding at the far end. And I'll definitely bond it in the communication room. So that might be an example where I only bonded at one end because there just isn't a provision to bond at the other end.
What about, I hear quite often that the use of a shielded patch cord at the work area outlet is sufficient to bond it at that end to give you a bond at both sides.
No, I mean, what's the, not at all. If I have a shielded patch cord on an unshielded twisted pair cable, so I may have a bond at the NIC card at the back of the computer or the device, but there's absolutely nothing for that shield to connect to at the outlet. There's nothing.
I'm sorry.
So all it is.
I meant shielded cable, right? So a shielded cable, you're bonding one end to the telecom rack. The telecom racks are bonded to the SBB in the telecom room. At the work area outlet side, a lot of people have a challenge with how do I bond that shielded cable at the work area outlet. So some manufacturers say use a shielded patch cord. That way it picks up the ground through the chassis on the
Yes.
on the.
That's different.
Is that sufficient?
I think it meets the manufacturer's requirements for having a completely bonded channel. So if your horizontal link is a shielded cable and it's bonded back at the comm room, you put in a shielded patch cord and that ties to the NIC. You have to assume that the NIC card in the back of the computer it is also has the shield bonded to the chassis. Then yes, I would say that creates a bond. It really isn't there any other provision. I've yet to see an outlet manufacturer out there that makes an outlet assembly such that they have a capability of bonding it at the outlet.
Right, exactly. And what would you bond it to? There's nothing
Exactly.
near it, unless you come out of it and plug into an electrical receptacle, the third prong of the electrical receptacle, which that doesn't sound very safe to me.
Well, they would have to put the conduit system. So instead, they couldn't just do a ring and string where they just drop a wire down the cavity of a wall. They would have to put in a outlet box, conduit, and the conduit itself would have to be bonded to the building ground. That's a lot to verify. Right. And then you could bond it to the box itself without going to an electrical box, because the box and the conduit would be all bonded together.
The way the electricians do their stuff, they do their stuff through conduit, and the conduit's bonded to the ground, and they'll attach their receptacle they'll strap it to the box, which is attached to the conduit, which is bonded to a ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Mr. Knowledge is in the house.
I don't think I answered all the questions. I don't think we've nailed all the controversies, but hey, our industry is still growing. We'll work it out at some point. We'll come out with some new standards.
See, it's all those controversies that give me show material. So I'm okay with controversies, because I'll post this and I guarantee you somebody will say, no, that's not the way you're supposed to do it, because somebody taught them that way. And I've always said, and I got this from my wife, just because that's the way your grandfather did it doesn't mean that that's the way you should do it.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. I appreciate your time, Mr. Tim.
You're welcome. Have a good week, Chuck.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye. I did it. Yes. I was so worried I'd messed that up, because that's the first time I had a guest on after hours and trying to play with the whole thing like that. And this thought just crossed my mind. Tim said that if you put a shielded cable inside a conduit and then you strap it to the conduit for the ground, Why do you need a shielded cable inside the conduit? Conduit is the best protection from EMI and RFI. If you're putting in conduit, unshielded cable is your best thing there. So that's all just crossed my mind after I clicked off with them. So the next question actually came to me from Aaron. It was a comment on YouTube. I'm putting on my safety glasses to ensure that the words don't hurt my eyes again. And he says, Chuck, for grid wire, for J-hook, is it just a grid wire, J-hook, or both that need to be distinguished by color? If you use a color-coded grid clip, you need to use anything else. And if you use just spray paint, or what kind is best? So what he's referring to there is that he responded to a video where I said that you can't use the ceiling grid wire. You have to put in your own independent wire, and that wire has to be anchored on both sides. That's in the code book, period. And I mentioned that the code book says something about painting it. So you got to identify it so that way it's yours. So this question really depends on the authority having jurisdiction, the AHJ. Now, if the AHJ might just say, if you use the yellow, Invent makes, I have one here somewhere. They have these, Invent has these yellow clips. I just did a TikTok video about it. We snap it on the grid and you can attach your wire to that grid. I would bet that most cases that would suffice most AHJs, that yellow grid. But that is an additional cost to the project, right? You got to buy all those clips. But all it takes is for you to get back charged one time by a ceiling contractor because somebody pulled a cable and it bent a wire and that bent the grid. It only takes one of those back charges to totally negate every Invent ceiling clip that you could ever buy, okay? Because it's not cheap to do that. For as far as painting, it doesn't really say in the code book. It just says paint. So I would assume regular spray paint would be fine. I would say pick a color that's going to be easily seen. I also recommend, pro tip number 2, that when you paint these wires, do it somewhere where it's not going to matter. What do I mean by that? I mean, find a spot on the floor on the construction site where they haven't laid the carpet down yet. It's just a bare concrete, and then spray it there, let it dry, and then hang that. I also suggest, another pro tip, when you paint that you paint it down near where it's going to attach to the grid. So that way it's easy for the electrical inspector to see and kind of attach to that. So make the inspector's job easy and try to anticipate his questions. If you work with one inspector long enough, you kind of know what they look for, and try to be proactive and take care of that before they can even ask for that. That's going to help your relationship with that inspector, and that's going to help a lot of your projects go smoother as you go down the highway with that. Because trust me, that won't be the first time, and that won't be the last time that inspector ever looks at one of your jobs, period. Okay, so let's check for some questions. So Peter, in response to my beer question, he's drinking a German Pilsner. Good, very good. And Fernando chimed in, and he's got lemon and guava Perrier. I didn't know that. So let's see what this question is here. If threaded rod or strut, Aaron's in the house. Hey, Aaron. I just answered your question. If threaded rod or strut trapeze is being used to support the conduits, ducts, or pipes, is it ever okay to attach J-hooks to them, like bat wings, on all thread, toggle bolts, or through strut? Oh, man, that's a great question. My gut feeling is no. You're going to want to stay away from that. That's my gut feeling. Because it says you're not supposed to support your stuff from other trades. It really, again, it's going to boil down to what's allowed by the AHJ, but generally they're going to tell you put in your own stuff 99% of the time. So thank you, Rod, for that question. And Forrest is watching with military personnel in Korea. Thank you for your service, gentlemen and ladies, and I hope you come back more often. I love my cable dogs. Love my cable dogs. And let's see who else we got here. Anybody else have any questions? So Todd says, so yeah, the portion with Tim was actually recorded. I just wasn't able to fix it out and get it to work. So yeah, so there you go. So that was the last question. We are at 29 minutes after. So I appreciate everybody being here tonight. So until next time, remember, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Take care, everybody.